share evidence-based lessons and the recommendation on how to improve the protection of human rights in Yemen. The question, we have some question for this side event. What is the status of women human rights in Yemen? What are the main forms of violence? What type of women are targeted? What are the services available for women human rights defenders, and what are the gaps of still remain? And what are the main offers that of the women in Yemen collectively contributed to the peace process? And I will give the floor for the first speakers today, Madam Rima Salim, special reporter on violence against women and the girls. You're welcome to discuss during 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be brief, as I would, like all of you, like to hear from the other panelists, particularly the Yemeni women that are with us here today. And I would like also to start by really thanking you, Peace Track Initiative, for organizing this important event, since it casts the light on really a forgotten situation in terms of an ongoing brutal conflict in Yemen, the humanitarian and human rights consequences of this conflict, but also the treatment of women and girls and women organizations. The treatment of women in Yemen has been of particular concern to the special procedures, including my mandate and my colleagues. The last intervention on this that we did is the one that I would like to focus on today, and which has been addressed to Ansar Allah in the areas that they control. Because in that we have expressed our deep concern about the consistent, long-standing erosion of women's rights and the discrimination that they are being subjected to based on their sex and gender in the areas that are controlled by Ansar Allah. What we have seen is a steady, accelerated push for segregating women in public spaces. So, for example, in universities, cafes, restaurants, but also a series of policies adopted to restrict their fundamental freedoms, like the freedom of movement, like imposing a duty to have a mahram or a male companion, despite the fact that actually Yemeni law does not require that. So it has really restricted and made it virtually impossible for many women to move around freely. Even for things like renting a car has been very, very difficult. And we see also restrictive policies with regards to female humanitarian Yemeni workers, also requiring them to have a mahram. And that, of course, has affected then the ability of Yemeni women and girls, especially female-headed households, but also others, to be able to have access to humanitarian aid and to have their needs addressed. Other fundamental rights that are being restricted are the freedom of association, the freedom of speech, the right to privacy. There is a severe restriction in access to sexual and reproductive health services, like contraceptives, of course. And there are even circulars prohibiting women from having the right to use cell phones without the agreement of mahrams, or to use cosmetics, or to dress in the way that they see appropriate. So this, what I just mentioned, is also accompanied by misogynistic messages that are spread in religious sermons, describing women as incomplete entities or human beings that bring about shame and evil. And I'm not going to get into also all the details that my colleagues will address with regards to the serious restrictions on women professionals, women human rights defenders, lawyers, journalists that are subjected to arbitrary detention and also forcefully disappeared. So as you can see, many of these policies I've just described and that have been adopted in the last few years are borrowed from a playbook that is all too familiar to us and that we see in other countries known for their repression and gender-based persecution of women and girls. So this is a very serious situation that I would say has not been taken sufficiently serious by the international community, and that I would really like to urge the Council, but also member states here and human rights organizations
to advocate on and to really engage on much more closely. I know it's very grim, but in the grim situation there is a ray of hope. I'm sure you all have heard about the recent appointment of 8 women to the Yemeni Supreme Court. So this is all but an example of the resilience and resistance of Yemeni society to regression that we are seeing when it comes to gender and equality of men and women. Thank you.
We have some problem for the technical. I will give the floor now to Haneen Dibash, the project manager at Parliament. You will come to speak about some issues for the women with the rights and your project manager.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Peace Recognition, for organizing this today. My name is Haneen Dibash. I'm from Parliament Organization, and we are in partnership with Peace Recognition and To Be Foundation on a project which is towards enhancing the resilience of Yemeni human rights defenders in Yemen and outside of Yemen. And it's a project that is funded by the EU. And I would like to just say something on the importance on supporting women human rights defenders, and especially the Yemeni one. So today we gather here to recognize the profound significance of supporting Yemeni human rights defenders who serve as a light of hope and resilience in the face of the immense challenges that Yemen is going through now. Supporting Yemeni human rights defenders is vital for amplifying their voices, for empowering marginalized communities, and for advancing human rights and equality in Yemen. They are the driving force behind the protection and promotion of fundamental human rights. Their dedication, resilience in the face of adversity inspires us all. These defenders are frequently the initial ones to speak out against injustice, discrimination, and oppression, even at the risk of their own lives. They work tirelessly, as they are doing right today, to ensure that governments, institutions, and societies held accountable for their actions. Their work reminds us that human rights are not abstract concepts, but lived experiences. Women human rights defenders contribute to the advancement of democracy, social justice, and peace. It is our collective responsibility to support and protect women human rights defenders. It is crucial to understand that protecting and empowering Yemeni women human rights defenders and promoting their participation in the peace process is not just a matter of gender equality. It is a strategic imperative for achieving lasting peace and stability in Yemen. So what can the international community do to support Yemeni women and encourage their participation in the peace process? First, we must advocate for the inclusion at every level of decision making. This includes the formal peace talks, but it also extends to the local governance and community leadership. Second, we must provide resources and training to help women build their capacity and participate effectively in peace-building efforts. This includes education, leadership training, and access to economic opportunities. Third, we must address the specific needs and challenges faced by Yemeni women, such as access to healthcare, protection from gender-based violence, and ensuring that their voices are heard in rebuilding Yemen. Fourth, we should encourage and support civil society organizations working to promote women's rights and participation in Yemen. These organizations play a vital role in amplifying their voices of Yemeni women. It is important that the international community not only acknowledges the vital role of women human rights defenders, but to actively engage in projects that fortify their safety and amplify their advocacy for fundamental rights. Moreover, international stakeholders should extend unwavering support to these remarkable women. Their tireless efforts deserve nothing less. Let us stand together in solidarity with the women of Yemen and all women human rights defenders for their rights, their dignity, and their hope to carry out for a brighter future. Thank you, everyone.
Now, I will give the floor. بحقيقة احنا كنا تقدمنا سكرتارية مجلس حقوق الإنسان للNGOs أننا سيكون لدينا متحدثات من اليمن وهم كانوا بسادة تجارب تسليط الضوء على المعاناة ومظاهر العنف التي يواجهوها، لكن للأسف نحن لم نجد الحق في أن نعطي المساحة لهؤلاء السيدات بإعطاء هذه الكلمات ونقل المعاناة التي يعانون منها في اليمن بسبب فضل الضيوف كما تحدثت عنها الأستاذة ريم سالم أو التحديات والمظاهر من العنف التي تحدثت عنها الأستاذة حنين في موضوع مدافعة عن حقوق الإنسان. لذلك سأضطر أننا أقرأ آسفة بعض الكلمات التي قام هؤلاء السيدات بنقلها لنا نيابة عنهم. الآن أترك المايك لزميلتي من Peace Track Initiative مبادرة مسار السلام لإعطاء بعض اللمحات عن دليل الإحالة في مدافعة عن حقوق الإنسان الذي تعمل عليه حاليا Peace Track وسوف تقوم بإطلاقه قريبا.
Good afternoon, everyone. We first of all want to excuse ourselves for the inconvenience, technical inconvenience that we face today. And I could only imagine the suffering of Yemenis at the moment due to the lack of electricity, lack of internet. This is just a brief complication that they suffer from for so long. But nevertheless, we gather here today, and we would have hoped to have provided you with more testimonies, but I'm sure that there is accessibility with that. You can find so much online, especially with regards to the grave issues that demand our attention. In this moment, we must embrace an intersectional perspective when we want to recognize the struggle against gender and social type-based violence in Yemen. And it cannot be divorced from the broader context of the social, economic, and political marginalization that women go through. We continue to witness how women in Yemen endure the unimaginable suffering of abuse and exploitation. But despite all the obstacles, we are also witnessing a rise in the collectiveness of feminist efforts and efforts to achieving peace, equality, and justice. The Peace Track Initiative, alongside the Women's Solidarity Network, has been giving so much effort, and also not only limited to the Peace Track Initiative and the Women's Solidarity Network, that actually sums up Yemeni women-led organizations as a whole in confronting the multi-layers of oppression that women experience. However, the more time we take to learn and experience the harsh and complexity of the context, we understand that the conversation, the services, and the work is still in the beginning. It is still in the beginning of demanding the minimum of equal rights and still far away from the justice discourse. The Peace Track Initiative has invested its effort recently to promote the protection and the resilience of women human rights defenders and the peace builders for an inclusive peace and justice. Recently, we've been developing something that is of a guide for women human rights defenders. It's a protection self-referral guide where we map out all forms of services available to women human rights defenders. And it has allowed us to see clearly the outcome of the lives of women and how severely at stake they are, and the gaps in the protection field as a whole, not only in Yemen, not only regionally, but also internationally. We have accumulated 70 international, regional, and national organizations who we have mapped their services, and it was clear for us to see that women human rights defenders struggle to fit into the generic criteria to receive grants, protection funds, legal aid, digital and psychological assistance. And despite the presence of these support services, most of them continue to rely on their limited resources, unfortunately. We see an inadequate responses, insufficient support, inaccessibility of services, on top of the societal institutional barriers, and most of which have been mentioned by Mr. Salem, Special Rapporteur, and my colleague Hanin Dabbagh. We will continue, of course, working together with women human rights defenders at the local level, in hopes that we localize and feminize the peace process and ensuring that they receive as much protections with the limited resources that we have, and with the solidarity that we also provide them, but we still have the gap of also giving support to Yemeni women in exile, to support women in the local communities. I think I will stop here, and we will also give the space for questions, and this is how we can maybe hopefully start a much more informative conversation. We will be soon launching the self-referral guide, and anyone is welcome to review, welcome to give their feedback on it, but we know that there's so much work to be done, and we thank you so much for being here with us today. Of course, the audience, it's open now for the audience to give their comments, or their statements, or their questions. As you've heard from the testimonies, there's unfortunately a lot to cover. As we referred, the consequences of also the ongoing conflict has created a multi-layered, severe environment of violence against women, and one of them has been recently, growing, which is their targeting and digital targeting, which has been which has led human rights defenders to self-censor on their activism.
Maybe we can. Thank you, Azam. I think now we can give the floor for if there are any question or comment. Yeah. Can you please your name and your organization?
السلام عليكم، صباح الخير. عبد الوهاب الكاين، منظمة أفريكا ووتش. أولا شكرا جزيلا على تنويرنا بهذه المعلومات القيمة حول الوضع الحقوقي والإنساني في اليمن، وكذلك نعلن تضامننا اللامشروط والقوي من مجلس حقوق الإنسان مع جميع الضحايا اليمنيين لما يتعرضون له من طيف هائل وكبير من الانتهاكات، تشمل القتل خارج نطاق القانون، الاختطافات، الاختفاءات القسرية، التعذيب، الاعتداءات الجنسية على النساء والأطفال، تجنيد الأطفال إلى غير ذلك من الانتهاكات، ولكن كذلك بدرجة أكبر نتضامن مع النساء لاستهدافهن تبعا للأسف للعقلية الذكورية في تلك المجتمعات، ولكن نشير إلى أنه لمحاولة الكف ومكافحة هذه الظواهر الخطيرة على مجتمعاتنا والتي فعلا ترهن حالة الحقوق والحريات في اليمن وفي باقي مناطق النزاعات المسلحة، سواء كانت نزاعات دولية أو نزاعات غير دولية تتنازع السلطة فيها مجموعات مسلحة، إن كانت تكفيرية وإن كانت ذات اتجاه آخر. نود أن نشير على أنه العمل يجب، أو هي دعوة مفتوحة لجميع الفاعلين وأصحاب المصلحة من منظمات غير حكومية وائتلافات وآليات أممية لحقوق الإنسان، وكذلك يجب استغلال اللجوء إلى القانون الجنائي الدولي كرادع وكآلية يمكن الاعتماد عليها بالتعاون مع المؤسسات الدولية ومع المدافعين عن حقوق الإنسان والنشطاء لمحاولة فرملة هذا اللجوء العنيف إلى استهداف النساء لمحاولة التخفيف من مأساتهن ومعاناتهن. شكرا جزيلا. نحن في المنظمات غير الحكومية في شمال افريقيا مستعدون تماما للتنسيق وللعمل مكثفا مع الإخوة والأخوات في اليمن وخارج اليمن في دول الشتات لرفع دعاوي ولكذلك الاشتغال على نظام التقارير في علاقة بهيئات المعاهدات والإجراءات الخاصة للمجلس. شكرا.
شكرا لكم. نكمل جهود المناصرة من قبل منظمات المجتمع المدني مع بعضها البعض، وأنا بتساءل كمان أيضا عن جهود المناصرة الدولية إذا كان لها مجال. يعني اليوم كان المفروض أن يكون إبراز أصوات النساء هو واحد من وسائل جهود المناصرة الدولية وتوصيل أصواتهم، لكن للأسف أن القيود لا تفرض فقط على النساء في اليمن ولكن أيضا تفرض على المنصات الدولية للأسف. فإذا كان هنالك أي سؤال آخر رجاء تفضل به، وطبعا رسالتكم توصل إلى داخل النساء في اليمن.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm Rahman from the European Union delegation. Thanks a lot for the event today and for the testimonies, but I think most importantly, thank you for the work you do on the day-to-day in Yemen, part of which we're very proud to support, as was mentioned. My question, in a sense, as we are starting the Human Rights Council session, is a bit more on how we can support you from Geneva and how you see the Human Rights Council dealing with the situation in Yemen. As you know, until a few years ago, there was an independent monitoring mechanism and a dedicated moment of discussion in Yemen. That is no longer the case, but there is an item 10 resolution that will be discussed again in this session, providing technical assistance to the National Commission. And I was wondering, from your point of view, if this is a kind of a adequate, in a sense, handling of the situation in Yemen from the Council, or whether you would wish something more, and how you think the Human Rights Council and Geneva, in a sense, mechanisms can support you more. Thank you.
بالنسبة للأدوار اللي كانت المفروض نحن نعملها من المجتمع الدولي والدول الداعمة لعملية السلام في اليمن، والدول الداعمة لأن تكون النساء لها صوت ورأي في اليمن وأكيد بتضامن، كان المفروض أن هذا الحدث اليوم أداة من هذه الأدوات للمناصرة ولتوصيل أصواتهم، لكن للأسف أنا كنت أتمنى أن نسمع صوت وداد البدوي الصحفية فريدة أحمد وكافة الخبيرات من داخل اليمن يتحدثن، لكن هذه إذا ما تتطلب جهودنا مع بعض في الفعاليات القادمة من دورات مجلس حقوق الإنسان أن يتم هنالك في تعاون أكثر مرونة لتوصيل المجتمع المدني لأصواتهم خاصة النساء. الأمر الثاني أن يكون هنالك عن طريق أيضا المبعوثين الأمميين المعنيين في اليمن، المبعوث الأممي أن يكون يعطي أولوية واهتمام بمشاركة حقيقية للنساء، لأنه لا زلنا نعمل كما يقال، وللأسف هذه الكلمة ليست جيدة، أننا نعمل في الظل، وهذا شيء يؤثر فعلا على مدى تقدمنا. جهود المناصرة تبذل بشكل كبير من خلال منظمات المجتمع المدني اللي تعمل في اليمن والبيس تراك، وبدأت مسار السلام تحاول قدر الإمكان إيصال هذه الرسائل عن طريق المنصات الدولية، سواء كنا هنا في جنيفا أو في CSW في نيويورك في الموسم شهر مارس، والذي شاركت به زميلتي أزل. وجود اليوم أيضا معنا الخبيرة المعنية بالعنف ضد النساء والأطفال يمكن يلقي أيضا نوع من تسليط الضوء ماذا يمكن. نحن نوصل لهم دائما كثير من التقارير، لكن فعلا يقولون انه في نقص في وصول المعلومات. كيف يمكن ان يعززوا هذه الجهود ووصول هذه الرسائل؟ اترك لك المايك.
Thank you. I mentioned to the Peace Track colleagues that we have challenges in getting, obviously, information from women and women organizations inside Yemen. It's very understandable challenges since
there are security concerns for them, especially if this information is brought online or via online measures. So we have to find also ways to perhaps rely on testimonies by women refugees and migrants that are outside Yemen and that are in more secure situation. There's one thing I didn't mention that I think we should also add, since this is about all women in Yemen, that of course non-Yemeni women face a lot of also violence in Yemen. Not only sexual exploitation and trafficking, but also trying to seek safety and being able to find safety outside Yemen. As special procedures, we have also engaged on the extrajudicial killing of migrants and refugees that have tried to cross into Saudi Arabia, and there is a good percentage of women among them. So I would also encourage us not to forget their needs and their rights, as they are amongst the most also vulnerable in Yemen.
Thank you for mentioning that point, because we have been deliberately using the term women in Yemen instead of Yemeni women, because we understand the complexity, and we know that there are so many refugees. We know, and we also understand that, for example, a high percentage of the internally displaced persons are also refugee women who have been heavily impacted by the ongoing conflict. And so, yes, thank you so much for that. This is an important subject to mention. And we also believe that, and we have been discussing this issue of finding the right resources, and it has been for us as a local organization that communicates, so as an international organization communicating with local organizations, it has been hard for us to get information, and especially from parts of the north of Yemen. But we will, of course, continue to push. We, of course, continue to coordinate, and with the little resources that we have, with the little information they have, we are always able to observe and analyze the context even more. Lisa, I'm not sure if you want to add something here.
اسمحوا لي بس أن أقرأ اليوم الأسماء التي كانت لابد أن تتحدث معنا، ولسبب ما فرضت القيود على إلقاء كلماتهم. لينا الحسني، مدير مؤسسة أكون للحقوق والحريات. أيضا كان لدينا نادية إبراهيم، منسقة مشروع الحماية في مؤسسة مبادرة مسار السلام. فاطمة الأسودي، خبيرة في مجال الأمن الرقمي. مها عوض، هي عضو اللجنة التوجيهية لشبكة التضامن النسوي ومدير لمؤسسة وجود للحقوق للأمن والحقوق. سأسلط الضوء فقط على جزئية أخيرة في موضوع التضامن النسوي. تعمل البيس تراك انيشيتيف مبادرة مسار السلام في دعم ائتلاف نسوي يسمى التضامن النسوي WSN Women Solidarity Network. يضم هذا الائتلاف ما يقارب 300 امرأة من القياديات والنساء الفاعلات والمدافعات عن حقوق الإنسان. تشكل هذا الائتلاف منذ عام 2013، ثم أعيد ترتيبه في عام 2016 بدعم مبادرة مسار السلام. تعتبر شبكة التضامن النسوي هي نواة لحركة نسوية داخل اليمن لتعزيز تمكين النساء ولتعزيز إرساء الحقوق وللدعوة للمطالبة بالمساواة في الحقوق والواجبات للنساء والرجال. شبكة التضامن النسوي هي عضوية أفراد أو منظمات متاحة للجميع في داخل اليمن أو خارجها. عدد عضوات الشبكة المتواجدة داخل البلد 60% بالنسبة لإجمالي عدد العضوات، 40% من خارج البلد في دول الشتات، خاصة مع استمرار فترة الصراع في اليمن. شبكة التضامن النسوي تعتبر منصة للمناصرة للمدافعات عن حقوق الإنسان وللنساء الناشطات لإبراز أصواتهن. تعمل الشبكة من خلال عدة أدوات يعني في إبراز أصوات النساء عن طريق نشرة السلام النسوي التي تدعمها مبادرة مسار السلام، وأيضا هنالك قاعدة الخبرات النسوية التي تحوي أكثر من 100 امرأة من الخبرات النسوية في كافة المجالات، وهي تحاول الترويج ودعم هؤلاء النساء من أجل وصولهن وتمكينهن من القرار وتمكينهم من المراكز القيادية في الوقت الذي تعاني كثير من يعني الوضع في اليمن يعاني كثير من تراجع على مستوى الحقوق والحريات للنساء وعلى مستوى التمكين. الشبكة أيضا تعتبر يعني واحدة من الائتلافات النسوية الرائدة. هنالك عدد من الائتلافات النسوية، لكن تعتبر شبكة التضامن النسوي من الائتلافات النسوية الرائدة في مساعدة دمج النساء في العمل وفق قواعد السلوك التي تنظم عمل هذه الشبكة، وبما يعزز تواصلها مع مكتب المبعوث الأممي للأمم المتحدة ومع الآلية الدولية لحقوق الإنسان ومع الخبراء المعنيين بحقوق الإنسان. شكرا لكم. If there are any question, please.
Can I ask you to maybe repeat your questions with regard to the Human Rights Council? Yeah, because I just let it fall on my colleagues, but maybe I can answer your question if you could repeat it for me. I mean, if you do remember it, if not, then we can just pass.
No, happily, I do remember my own question. Otherwise, it was basically a question to ask if you think that the Human Rights Council in Geneva, where we're currently sitting, can do something more to keep the situation of human rights in Yemen high on the international agenda, or whether there is any suggestion that you want to offer for the resolution that we'll be negotiating this session on technical assistance to Yemen. So this is, in short, was my question. Thank you.
شكرا لك. هو فعلا سؤال مهم، وانا اقترحت انه مسألة القيود الانستراكشن اللي توضع على النساء للاسف لم تكن هي في الداخل اليمن فقط، لكن يعني اليوم ما واجهناه وتواجهنا به برضه يعتبر نوع من انواع القيود التي فرضت بحيث انها منعت وصول رسالة هؤلاء النساء. يعني نكون في مساحة أكثر للمجتمع المدني يصل. يعني نحن نعمل عندما يعمل المجتمع المدني أحيانا قد يكون ليس بدعم دول، يواجه كثير من العراقيل والصعوبات، لكن إذا كان هنالك فعلا في تضافر من الجهود إنه فعلا الدول الأعضاء توصل رسالة للمجلس إنه يجب إعطاء مساحة أكثر للنساء في توصيل رسائلهم، نساء المجتمع المدني. يعني الشيء الثاني انه ايضا عن طريق المقابلات المعنيه سواء كان الخبراء المعنيين ايضا بحقوق الانسان، سواء الاجراءات الخاصه والاليات التعاقديه والغير تعاقديه، هذا شيء مهم جدا ان تكون المساحه مفتوحه للمقابلات. الامر الثاني ايضا ان تكون بعثات الدول على قدر، خاصه الدول المعنيه بموضوع السلام باليمن وموضوع تمكين النساء باليمن، على قدر من المسؤولية في سماع هؤلاء الأصوات. هذا هو ما نريده فقط. أعتقد أن كان في سؤال من القاعة. هنالك سؤال كان من القاعة. Yeah, you will come.
Thank you. My name is Sabah Haddad. I'm from the Baha'i International Community Organization. So I want to just lend really my voice to you and thank you so much for offering this space for specifically the Yemeni women and we really also as witness how much pressure has been put by the Ansarullah and by the Houthis controlled area on the Baha'i women as well, who have been abducted, who have been, arrested for nothing but their religion and belief, separated from their young children. So my question is, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure many of you know that 17 Baha'is have been arrested, among them women, which is also new to the Yemeni society, to actually arrest and abduct or forcibly disappear women. That we understand that the Yemeni society, with its tribes and cultures and rich diversity, would not accept this. So my question is, how are we reaching out to the public opinion in Yemen? Because we know, and I think also was mentioned by you, that the right to education, especially to women, has been really difficult, and so we also have been seeing the high rate of illiteracy, and I'm very sorry to hear that many of the panelists were not even able to lend their voice. And my question is, what are the tools that can be created to reach out to the Yemeni society, so that we can hear their voice? We can also not only talk here and have a conversation, but how can that influence the public opinion of Yemen? We know that the society have been unfortunately controlled. Even internet have been controlled. All these tools have been really controlled by Ansarullah. So my question is, what kind of, how can we influence media? How can we influence the level of thought that we, that people also understand the role of women, the vital role of women that can be played by the Yemeni women. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your question, and we have been actually focusing heavily on this in an advocacy level, international level, but also by educating or providing educational material and awareness for women at the local communities. And we have actually at the Peace Track Initiative, with our partners from El Parliament, FTB Foundation, and funded by the EU, we have been able to establish a program, first of all, a leadership program that aids and supports and educates women on their resilience, supports them with all forms of resources, and providing them with the material that they need to further their advocacy and further their work on the ground, whether in advocacy, whether in political spaces and economic spaces. And we have, of course, targeted the minorities, and we have the participants from the Baha'i community, from those who are also of refugee background, those who are also of vulnerable groups. And I must emphasize that there is so much we can offer, but given the current sensitive, politically sensitive and ideologically sensitive context, I think the role of the diaspora comes in place now, because we understand the dire situation, not only in a humanitarian but human rights aspect. We understand that human rights are being targeted, and human rights defenders are being targeted, and they can't lend their voices, not only in an institutional level, but also there is heavy targeting. So I think this is where we, the diaspora, play a role, where we can be the voice of those who are underrepresented or are self-censored, and this is what we at the Peace Track Initiative have been doing, and many other women-led organizations that are based not many, but I think one of the things that we hope is that the international community, international organizations or funders and sponsors and donors would allocate at least a minimum fund to bring more projects, bring more organizations to life that can be the bridge, be the intermediary for those who are, inside a context that is isolated and marginalized. I hope I answered your question, but there's of course, again, as we've mentioned, there's so much to cover. And also for the Human Rights Council, we definitely need the more technical support rather than just speaking of the current context at each session. And yes, we have 2 minutes and we will be disciplined. We will, yes, I'm not sure if there are, yes, please go ahead. I'm so sorry.
Thank you very much, and I'll keep it short if there's only 2 minutes left, but I just wanted to mention my appreciation for organizing this event, calling specific attention to the situation of women in Yemen and your tireless efforts in that. And it has many aspects, as you mentioned, but I also really appreciate that you read out the comments and the statements of the colleagues that couldn't be here today. So thanks so much, and there being many aspects, I would like to focus my question on the meaningful involvement of women on all, both decision making, but also other levels if lasting and sustainable peace is to be reached. I heard your calls on how the international community can contribute. We really take them along. And at the same time, you also mentioned the dire situation of women, the threats they face every day. And my question is, how can we support and enhance their meaningful participation, but at the same time, keeping them safe? So taking their safety and security into account. Not an easy question for 2 minutes, but thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, this is what we've been doing recently. This is what most of the efforts from the Peace Track Initiative and many women-led organizations have been focusing on, is that they, working on the self-referral guide to ensure that there is safety as they, to provide them the civic space, to provide them the space to ensure that they have there is a meaningful participation in the different sects. Sorry, because they're already standing and they're like waving, so we need to go. But I can share with you all the work that we have been doing and all the other organizations, and you can see so much online that is available on the efforts that have been done, also at the web pages of the UN and UN Women. We thank you so much for your participation and being patient with us with all the technical issues, and giving the last word for my colleague.
Thank you for today and understanding what I should technical. Thank you so much.